You know that heavy, suffocating silence that falls over a house?
Hmm?
Like a split second after a bedroom door slams?
Oh, yeah. The classic aftermath of a massive parent-teen blow-up. It's just the worst feeling.
It really is. You are just standing there in the hallway, your heart is totally pounding against your ribs, and the only thought looping in your head is, how on earth do we fix this?
Right, because in that moment, it feels completely broken.
Exactly. So today we are taking a deep dive into exactly that. We're breaking down the invisible architecture of parent-teen trust.
Which is such a fascinating way to look at it.
It is. We're going to look at how that trust shatters silently in the background, and we'll give you the exact psychological four-step framework you need to rebuild it.
Yes. And we are pulling insights from two really great sources today. We have a deeply researched article on family trust dynamics, and we're putting that alongside this fascinating design document for a premium parenting workbook.
Right. The one created by a brand called Playprint Pals.
Yeah, that's the one. And the beauty of looking at these two texts together is that they strip away all that generic, greeting card advice.
Yeah, the whole just talk to your kids kind of stuff.
Exactly. The Playprint Pals workbook, in particular, treats trust not as a feeling, but actually as an engineering problem.
Which I love. It makes it actionable.
It really does. They describe trust as the invisible architecture of a family. It isn't a signed contract. It's a living structure built from thousands of microscopic moments.
Right, like a promise kept, or a reaction that is carefully managed, or just a boundary being respected.
Precisely. It's the little things that build the building.
But architectures can crumble. And before we can get to the 4 steps of rebuilding that structure, we really need to look at how it falls apart in the first place.
Yeah, we have to look at the wreckage.
Okay, let's unpack this because the article points out something terrifying. Trust rarely shatters in one explosive moment. It's actually a slow drain.
A slow drain, yeah. That's a perfect way to put it.
The analogy that immediately came to mind for me was like a smartphone battery. You know how your phone drains in the background because of a dozen apps running silently?
Oh, absolutely. You don't even notice the battery is dying until you desperately need to make a call, and the screen just goes completely black.
Right, and parents often stare at that slammed door looking for the one big thing that ruined the relationship, when really the battery's been draining for months through what the literature calls silent trust breakers.
Yeah, let's look at those background apps draining the battery. First on the list is inconsistency, specifically in the form of broken promises.
And we usually think of a broken promise as like missing a major milestone,
Right.
right? Like missing a graduation or something huge.
Exactly. But teenagers are fiercely attuned to fairness in the micro interactions. It's the small stuff.
What's an example of that?
Well, telling a teen, if you speak to me like that again, you lose the car keys, and then, never actually taking the keys.
Oh, wow. So empty threats count as broken promises.
Yes. Or promising to review their college essay after dinner, but then you get sucked into work emails instead.
Which teaches a pretty devastating lesson over time. A teenager's brain is constantly looking for patterns, right?
Yes, exactly. They are pattern recognition machines.
So if a parent is inconsistently enforcing rules or just casually dropping commitments, the pattern the teenager recognizes is that your words are simply not reliable.
Right. Trusting your word essentially becomes a losing bet for them.
That is so tough to hear. But what happens when the teen actually does the right thing and the parent still reacts poorly?
Ah, yeah. Punishing honesty. That's a massive one.
Right. Let's say a teenager goes to a party, realizes there is alcohol there, and actually calls for a ride home.
Which is what you want them to do.
Right. But the parent picks them up and then completely loses their mind on the drive back, just
Yeah.
yelling, lecturing, grounding them for a month.
The tragedy there is that the parent genuinely believes they're teaching a hard lesson about safety.
They think they're doing the right thing.
They do. But the mechanics of what the teenager actually learns are entirely different. The teenager learns that honesty is a lethal trap.
Wow. A lethal trap.
Yeah. The punishment for telling the truth was so severe and dysregulating that their brain basically flags honesty as a threat to their own survival in the household.
So by punishing the disclosure, the parent is basically blinding themselves.
Precisely. They eliminate their own access to the very information they need to keep their child safe in the future. The teen will just, build a better hiding place next time.
Okay, let's pause here because this brings up the next major trust breaker, which is secret surveillance. Tracking locations without telling them or like reading their private text messages.
Right. The snooping.
And I really have to push back on this based on what my own protective instincts are screaming.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I suspect my teenager is doing something dangerous, isn't secret surveillance justified? I mean, parents do this because the world is objectively dangerous.
It is dangerous. That's a very real fear.
So if I tell my teen I'm backing off, aren't I just handing a developing impulsive brain a free pass to make terrible choices? That just feels negligent, not trusting.
That cognitive dissonance is the great paradox of parenting adolescents. The intent behind the surveillance is pure protection. We know that.
Right. It comes from love.
It does. But the methodology dictates the outcome. We really have to separate the parent's protective intent from the teenager's psychological experience of being watched secretly.
Okay, so how does the teen actually experience it?
Well, when a teenager discovers they are being surveilled without their knowledge, they do not feel protected. They feel a fundamental violation of their psychological space.
Wow. A violation. That's a strong word.
It is, and it forces the teenager to develop elaborate workarounds. It turns them into highly skilled liars simply because they're trying to carve out oxygen for themselves.
Man. Okay. And the final silent drain on the battery is emotional dismissal.
Yes. This one is so common and so damaging.
A teenager comes to you completely crushed over a text from a friend, and the parent sighs and says, you'll get over it. Wait until you have to pay a mortgage.
Right, the classic real-world problem speech.
Yeah. It looks like a harmless shrug to the parent, but it acts like a wrecking ball. It teaches the teen that their inner world is just utterly trivial to you.
And after a few of those dismissive shrugs, they just shut the door to their inner world permanently.
Which brings us to a really crucial question. Why does this clash happen so violently? Why does a parent's protective instinct collide so disastrously with the teenager's behavior?
Well, both texts anchor this conflict entirely in biology. It's not just attitude.
It's biological.
Absolutely. The teenage brain is neurologically mandated to seek independence. They're wired to test boundaries and form an identity that is completely distinct from their caregivers.
So this pushback isn't them just being difficult for the sake of being difficult. It's not a personality flaw?
Not at all. What's fascinating here is that the developmental imperative to individuate is colliding head-on with the parent's biological imperative to protect.
The metaphor that really helps me visualize this is like an animal shedding its shell to grow.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, like when a crab sheds its shell, it is incredibly vulnerable, it is prickly, it hides in the rocks. But if it doesn't shed the shell, it literally can't grow.
Exactly. A teenager's push for autonomy is that shedding process. They need a growing zone of privacy to develop a separate sense of self.
So when a parent violates that privacy by, say, reading a diary, the teen registers it as a rejection of their actual identity.
Yes, a teenager pulling away and wanting privacy is not a symptom of a failing family. It is actually a biological success story.
Wait, really? A success story?
Yes, it simply means the relationship requires a total recalibration. The rules of engagement must change because the organism itself, the teenager, is fundamentally changing.
Okay, this brings us to the absolute centerpiece of our deep dive. If this clash of biology is a feature, not a bug, then conflict is just inevitable.
It is. Ruptures will happen.
The battery will drain. The door will slam. The parent is going to lose their temper or say something dismissive at some point. So when the invisible architecture fractures, how do you get back to zero?
This is where the Playprint Pals workbook really shines. It outlines a highly specific, four-step repair framework.
Okay, let's get into it. Step 1 is acknowledge the rupture directly.
Yes, naming the event without minimizing it is absolutely vital.
How do they suggest doing that?
Well, the workbook provides an exercise where parents write down what happened using only objective facts, removing all emotional justification.
So no defending yourself.
Exactly. The script looks something like, I reacted terribly when you told me about the grade. I raised my voice, I interrupted you, and I made you feel completely unsafe coming to me.
What jumps out immediately there is the total absence of excuses.
Zero excuses.
There is no, I was just so stressed about paying the bills or, I had a headache. It really requires the parent to regulate their own emotions rather than asking the teenager to absorb them.
That's spot on. You aren't fishing for sympathy. You are presenting the cold, hard facts of your own behavior.
Taking that accountability leads directly into step 2. And step 2 requires an immense amount of parental ego control.
Oh, it really does.
Step 2 is apologize without conditions, the clean apology. You basically cannot use the word but.
The word but is the universal eraser of an apology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's truly unpack the psychology of this, because it fights every single parental instinct.
It's so hard to do in the moment.
Right. You are sitting there apologizing for losing your temper, and everything in your brain is screaming to add, but if you hadn't lied to me in the first place, I wouldn't have yelled.
You desperately want to teach the lesson. You want the last word.
Exactly. Why is that urge so strong?
The urge to add the condition is overpowering because the parent is terrified that a clean apology basically equates to endorsing the teenager's bad behavior.
Like saying what they did was okay.
Right. But the moment that condition is added, the locus of blame shifts entirely back onto the teenager. The value of the repair is just instantly atomized.
So a clean apology takes ownership of the parent's behavior and the impact of that behavior entirely separate from the teenager's actions.
Yes.
Let me clarify this, though.
Yeah.
You're not saying the teenager gets away with whatever behavior started the fight, right?
Absolutely not. The teenager's choices must be addressed, but they have to be addressed in a completely distinct conversation at a different time when nervous systems are calm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you fold their discipline into your apology, neither message is heard. The architecture stays broken.
So we have swallowed our pride, we've named the rupture, we've offered a clean apology. Step 3 is where we shift from looking backward to looking forward.
Yes, step 3 is ask what trust would look like to them.
Right, instead of assuming you know how to fix it, you basically hand them the blueprint.
You ask the question directly. You say, what would help you feel safe trusting me again right now?
That's a great question.
The Playprint Pals design document actually includes a fascinating interactive section for this, where teens can physically draw or write out their boundaries, and teenagers usually have incredibly concrete, actionable answers.
They don't usually ask for a pony. They ask for things like, I need you to knock and wait for an answer before opening my door.
Exactly. Or, I need you to promise you won't tell Aunt Sarah about my panic attacks.
They are laying out the literal floor plan of the privacy they need to feel secure.
And listening to those answers provides the exact roadmap for the repair process. Even if their request stings, like, say, asking you not to talk to them for a full hour after they get home from school.
Ouch. Yeah, that would sting.
It does, but accommodating that request shows that you respect their autonomy. You are signaling that you trust their ability to know what they need.
Which catapults us into step 4, the longest and hardest phase of the framework. Commit to specific change and follow through.
Yes. The architecture isn't rebuilt by the apology itself. Trust is the steady, relentless accumulation of kept promises over time.
This is where we see the concept of the stress test, right?
Yes, the stress test. A teenager will treat a parent's newly promised behavior like a scientist testing a hypothesis.
So if you agreed to the boundary of not texting them while they are at their after-school job, they are basically waiting to see what happens on day 3 when you are feeling anxious.
They are running the experiment. They want to know, will the commitment survive inconvenience? Will it survive the parent's own stress?
And if the parent caves and texts them anyway, the teen's hypothesis is confirmed.
Exactly. They realize the apology was just words. The invisible architecture collapses again.
Wow. So the neurological reality of trust reconstruction requires this testing phase.
It does. After a major rupture, a teenager's nervous system is primed for the other shoe to drop. This is why patience from the parent is just non-negotiable.
Because teenagers don't owe a parent instant warmth or immediate forgiveness just because an apology was issued.
No, they don't. Pushing a teenager for a quick reconciliation usually backfires violently because it feels like a demand to ignore their own protective instincts.
So a parent has to learn to tolerate the chill. You just consistently show up, knock on the door, wait for the answer, and hold the boundary without demanding they smile at you.
Exactly. The parents who can tolerate a slower pace of repair are the ones who ultimately build a truly durable relationship.
Okay, so transitioning from that crisis mode brings us to the maintenance phase. Once you have navigated the 4 steps for a major blowup, how do you prevent having to do it again next week?
Right. Both texts lay out a framework for daily trust-building habits. These are small, repeatable actions that reinforce the structure so that minor conflicts don't trigger a total collapse.
Let's examine the mechanics of these daily habits. The first is loosening control visibly.
Yes. If secret surveillance was the rupture, you have to transition to transparent communication.
The literature suggests explicitly stating, I have deleted the tracking app. If I'm worried about your safety, I will look you in the eye and ask you.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are modeling vulnerability here. By giving up the secret mechanism of control, You give the teenager the opportunity to demonstrate their own reliability.
Because trust cannot be a one-way street where the parent demands honesty but operates in secrecy.
Exactly. It has to be mutual.
The next habit fascinated me because of its sheer simplicity. The 10-minute rule. 10 completely focused, undistracted minutes a day with your team.
No phones, no multitasking, no driving while talking, just face-to-face attention.
That sounds easy, but it's probably really hard in practice.
It is, but the psychology behind those 10 minutes is profound. During adolescence, a teenager's world is chaotic. Their prefrontal cortex is basically under major construction.
Right.
So when a parent offers 10 minutes of undivided attention, it acts as a co-regulatory mechanism. It physically lowers the teenager's cortisol levels.
Wow. It sends a neurological signal of secure attachment, proving that they are a priority, even in a chaotic household.
Exactly.
Another critical habit is validating before solving. Let's say a teen comes into the kitchen and says, "My math teacher is completely unfair. I failed the quiz."
The immediate parental urge is to solve the problem, right? Well, did you study the study guide? Let's email the teacher.
Right. But jumping to the solution bypasses the emotion. It leaves the teenager feeling completely unseen.
The habit to cultivate here is emotional validation. Just saying, wow, that sounds incredibly frustrating. You must be so stressed.
And the neuroscience of validation shows that naming the emotion helps settle the amygdala.
Yes. Once their nervous system is calm, they are far more likely to invite you into the problem-solving process voluntarily.
And when you are trying to understand their world, the habit of using open-ended questions is vital. But not just any questions.
Right, because teenagers have highly sophisticated radar for questions that are actually traps.
Totally. If you ask, "Who were you texting at 11 p.m.?" That's an interrogation. If you ask, "What was the funniest thing that happened today?" you are inviting connection without a hidden agenda.
Tying all of this together is the ultimate daily habit, keeping your own nervous system calm.
This one is huge.
It is. When a teenager makes a difficult disclosure, maybe they admit they dented the car or they are struggling with a class, the parent's ability to not explode is the single greatest predictor of future honesty.
When you model emotional regulation, you prove that the architecture of the relationship can actually hold the weight of their mistakes.
Perfectly said.
Let's pull all these threads together. Navigating the parent-teen dynamic requires understanding the unseen forces at play. We've examined the silent trust breakers, like punishing honesty and invalidating emotions that drain the battery in the background.
Yes.
We looked at the biological imperative of the teenage brain, realizing their push for autonomy is akin to shedding a shell for necessary growth, not just a personal attack.
Such an important reframe.
And we broke down the intense psychology of the four-step repair framework, acknowledging the rupture with facts, offering a clean apology free of conditions, asking for the blueprint of what trust looks like to them, and surviving their stress tests with relentless follow-through.
And of course, the daily habits to maintain it all.
Right. The nervous system regulating daily habits, like the 10-minute rule, and validating before solving to maintain that hard-won connection.
The underlying mechanism in all of this is reciprocity. Trust is an active, daily practice that just cannot be demanded through authority.
So what does this all mean for you? By abandoning the urge to control and utilizing this framework, you aren't just surviving the teenage years.
No, you are actively engineering a dynamic where a young adult feels secure enough to be deeply honest with you.
And that psychological safety is really the only thing that guarantees a genuine relationship once they finally leave your house.
Absolutely. It's the long game.
Which brings us to a final difficult question to sit with. The texts make an undeniable case that teenagers must have a growing zone of privacy to formulate their own identity, and that true trust requires dismantling the architecture of surveillance.
Right.
But privacy, by its very definition, creates the opportunity to hide things. It creates the space necessary to fail.
It does.
So as you guide the teenager in your life, you have to ask yourself, are you prepared to let them make mistakes entirely out of your sight if letting go of that control is the ultimate price of keeping their trust?